أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم رسولا ونبيا ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Continuing on with the Prophet ﷺ's legendary government military legacy, the era of Sayyidina Umar bin Al-Khattab. After completing the Prophet ﷺ's legendary military career, a total of 30 videos on the same channel, the era of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, the era of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, which is known as the Prophet ﷺ's legendary military legacy, a total of 50 videos. And now on Sayyidina Umar bin Al-Khattab, video number 39, page number 75, 2.4.6, taking care of Ahlud Dima. Taking care of Ahlul Dima, respecting treaties with them, fulfilling their rights as granted by Sharia, asking them to do their duties towards the Muslims, checking on their situation, restoring their rights in accordance with Sharia when they had been wrong. All were duties of the governor. The Khalif set specific conditions for Ahlul Dima in most cases before entering into treaties with them. Then they guaranteed their rights and asked them to adhere to those conditions. 2.4.7 Consulting people of wisdom in the province and honoring prominent people. Umar emphasized the importance of consulting wise people in their lands. The governors implemented this principle and held gatherings where they would consult the people. He commanded his governors to continually consult the people of wisdom, and he asked them to honor people in accordance with their status. Umar wrote to Abu Musa al-Ashari, saying, I have heard that you allow all kinds of people to come to you. When this letter of mine reaches you, allow the noble people and the people of the Quran, piety, and religious commitment to come in first. When they have taken their sets, then allow the common folk to come in. He also wrote to him, saying, people refer their matters to the prominent people, so honor the prominent peoples, for it is enough for the weak Muslim to be treated fairly with regard to judgment and division of wealth. 2.4.8 Looking at the developmental needs of the province during the governorship, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas dug a channel in response to a request from some of the Persian leaders in the interest of the farmers in the area. Umar ibn al-Khattab wrote to Abu Musa al-Ashari, commanding him to dig a channel for the people of Basra, and Abu Musa to dug a channel for Parisians long to bring water to the inhabitants of Basra. When founding the famous cities of Kufa, Basra, and Al-Fustat, Umar's governors also paid attention to laying out streets, distributing land, building mosques, securing water sources, and other public interests of these cities. They also encouraged the people to settle in areas that were less desirable because of their proximity to the enemy or for other reasons. They offered them incentives and land grants to encourage them to remain there. Umar and Uthman did that in Antioch, Antakya, and in some parts of Mesopotamia. 2.4.9 Paying attention to the social affairs of the inhabitants of the provinces. When delegations came to Umar ibn al-Khattab, he would ask them about their governor, and they would say good things. He would ask them, does he visit the sick? And they would say yes. He would ask them, does he visit slaves when they are sick? And they would say yes. He would ask them, does he treat the weak? Do they sit at his door waiting to be admitted? If they said no to any of these questions, he would dismiss that governor. Umar would dismiss a governor if he heard that he did not visit the sick and did not admit the weak. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu was also keen for his agents to appear humble before the people, so that the people would feel that a governor was one of them and was not different from them. Umar stipulated that his governor should ride, mount, and wear clothes of the same standard as people, and he forbade them to have doorkeepers and gate keepers. 2.4.10 Not discriminating between Arabs and non-Arabs. The governors were obliged to treat people equally and not to differentiate between Arabs and other Muslims. Some people came to a governor of Umar ibn Al-Khattab, and he gave to the Arabs and not to the non-Arabs. Umar wrote to him, saying, "It is sufficient evil for a man to despise his Muslim brother." According to another report, he wrote to him, saying, "Why did you not treat them equally? There are a number of other moral duties which are enjoined by Islam, such as fulfilling covenants, being sincere in one's work, remembering that Allah is always watching in everything that one does, and being prepared to cooperate with others in all good and righteous deeds, and the obligation to be sincere towards Allah, His Messenger, the leaders of the Muslims, and their common folk, for this is the interest of all." In addition to adhering to these obligations, the governor was also required to propagate them among the people in his province through his khutbahs, writing, preaching, and dealings. The governors at the time of the rightfully guided caliphs in general were a fine example of these moral attitudes and duties, both in personal matters and in the way in which they interacted with the people. 2.5 Translation in the provinces and the working hours of the governors. Translation in the province. Translation was regarded as a means of helping the governors at the time of the rightfully guided caliphs, and there were a real need for it in many cases. Umar asked his governors in Iraq to send to Medina some of the Persian chieftains so that he could discuss the Kharaj with them. They sent him some chieftains and a translator along with them. It is reported that Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah knew a little of the Persian language, and he translated for Umar and Al-Hurmuzan in Medina. Knowledge of translation is something that was well known in the Islamic State at the time of the rightfully guided caliphs and even before that. If we remember that the Kharaj records were not written in Arabic, then we will realize the extent of the need for translators in the provinces which could translate in cases of Kharaj and other matters. The agents in charge of the Kharaj were mostly Persians or non-Arabs. The spread of newcomers to the faith in the various Islamic regions also made the need for translation a top priority in judicial and other matters, as did the need for negotiations between the leaders of the conquest, who were mostly governors, and the people of the conquered lands. 2.5.2 Working hours of the governors. There was no precise definition of the working hours at the time of Umar. The Khalif and his governors worked at all hours, and they did not have doorkeepers. Some of them used to patrol at night, and their example in that regard was Umar ibn Al-Khattab himself, who was famous for walking around at night on his patrols of Al-Madinah. The people would meet the governor at various times, asking him to deal with their affairs, and they did not find anyone who would prevent them from entering to meet the governor on the grounds that this was not the time for work. The governors were well known for their eagerness to finish tasks straight away, with no delay. Umar ibn al-Khattab wrote concerning this to Abu Musa al-Ashari, saying, "Do not put off today's work until tomorrow. Lest work accumulate, and you will achieve nothing." So, don't procrastinate, because you won't get anything at the end. Umar's checking on his governors, checking on governors. Umar did not stop at selecting the best men to work on as his agents and governors. Rather, he strove hard to follow up on them and checked on them after appointing them to be sure that they were doing well, and for fear that they might deviate or drift away. His slogan was, "It is better for me to dismiss one governor every day than to leave a wrongdoer in place for even 1 minute." And he said, "Any governor of mine who wrongs anyone and I hear of his wrongdoing, if I do not change him, then I have wronged him myself." One day he said to those who were around him, "What do you think if I were to appoint over you the best one I could find, then command him to be just? Would I have done what is required of me?" They said, "Yes, O Amir al-Mu'mineen." He said, "No, not until I see how he does and whether he will do what I have commanded him to do or not." Umar was very strict in checking on his governors and agents. His methods of administration was to give his governors free rein in local affairs, to limit them with regard to public affairs, and then to watch and see how they dealt with things. He had a secret service which watched the governors and the people. The historical sources tell us that something like the modern-day intelligence services existed at the time of Umar ibn Al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, and that he knew as much about those agents who were far away from him as those who slept with him in the same town. There was no region or area in which there was a governor or army commander, but there were eyes constantly watching him. And the words uttered in the east and the west reached Umar every morning and evening. You can see that the letters that he wrote to his governors and agents, and some agents would accuse the closest people to them of spying for Umar. Umar had numerous means of checking on his governors, which included the following. Asking the governors to enter Medina by day. Umar asked his governors when they came to Al-Madinah to enter the city by day and not at night, so that the wealth and booty that they brought could be seen, and so that it would be easy to ask them questions and bring them to account. Asking the governors to send delegations. Umar asked the governors to send delegations from the local people so that he could ask them about their land and the kharaj that had been imposed on them, so as to ensure that they were not being wronged. And he asked them to give their testimony concerning the situation in their lands. The kharaj of Kufa was brought to him by 10 of its people, and the kharaj of Basra was brought by a similar number. When they appeared before him, they testified by Allah that it was good wealth, and that no Muslim or mu'ahad had been wrong with regard to it. This was sufficient to prevent governors from wronging the people. If that had happened, the delegates would have complained to Umar ibn al-Khattab and told him about it. Umar usually held discussions with the delegates and asked them about their lands and about the governors and how they treated them. 3.1.3 Mail service. Umar sent mail to the governors in the various regions, and when the mail carrier wanted to return to Al-Madinah, he would issue orders that the call be given to the people, asking whether anyone wanted to send a letter to the Khalif so that he could carry it back to him without any interference from the local governors. The mail carrier himself did not know anything about the letters or their content. Thus, the people had free rein to send complaints of wrongdoing to Umar himself without the governor or his men knowing anything about it. When the mail carrier reached Umar, he would give the letters he had to Umar, and Umar would read them and see what they said. 3.1.4 The General Inspector Muhammad ibn Maslama al-Ansari was appointed by Umar ibn al-Khattab to check on the governors and to examine any complaints that were made against them. The role of Muhammad ibn Maslama was that of the General Inspector of the Khalif. He checked on how the governors were doing their job and brought to account those who were falling short. Umar sent him to check on the senior governors, investigate complaints, to meet the people and listen to them, and to transmit their opinions of their governors directly to Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. Muhammad ibn Maslama radiallahu anhu also had some of the Ansars with him, or he had some helpers rather. 3.1.5 Hajj season provided Umar with an opportunity to receive news about the people and the governors. He made it a season for reflecting, checking, and seeking opinions from all regions, where those with complaints about wrongdoing would gather, and the watchers whom Umar had sent to all regions of his state to check on his agents and governors would report back to him. The agents themselves would also come to give an account of their actions. The season of Hajj was like a general assembly that was as refined as any general assembly in any era. During the Hajj season, Umar would give a summary of the governor's duties to the people. Then he said, "Whoever has been treated differently than that, let him stand up." No one of the people present stood up on that occasion except one man, which is indicated of the justice of those governors and how pleased the people were with them. That man said, "Your governor so-and-so gave me 100 lashes." Umar asked the governor, and he did not receive any satisfactory answer, so he said to the man, "Get up and retaliate the qisas." Amr ibn al-As stood up and said, "O Amir al-Mu'mineen, if you do that, it will happen a lot, and I will be it will become something regular after you are gone. Umar said, how can I not settle scores? When I saw the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam allowing others to settle scores with him, Amr said, let us make a deal with him. He said, here he is, make a deal with him. So the agent gave him 200 dinar for each blow with the whip. So he gave him 200 dinar and then 200 dinar for each blow or that he whipped him. Continuing on now to page number 84, 3.1.6, regular inspections of the region. Before he was killed, Umar was thinking of traveling around the provinces himself to check on the governors and see the situation of the people and make sure that the affairs of his vast state were in order. Umar said, if I live, inshallah, I will travel among the people for 1 year, for I know that the people have needs that I do not hear about. The agents do not tell me about them and they cannot reach me. So I will go to Syria and stay there for 2 months. Then I will go to Mesopotamia and stay there for 2 months. Then I will go to Kufa and stay there for 2 months. Then I will go to Basra and stay there for 2 months. And by Allah, what a good year it will be. Umar radiallahu anhu managed to carry out some of his plans, particularly in Syria, as he went there several times and checked on the situation and entered the houses of the governors and agents. To check closely on them, he entered the house of Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah radiallahu anhu and saw how simply he lived, and there took place a discussion between Umar and the wife of Abu Ubaidah, in which she blamed Umar for the simple and ascetic life they were living. He also visited the house of Khalid ibn al-Walid. There he found that he had nothing that would attract attention except his weapons, which he was busy repairing. When visiting these people, he would make surprise visits. He took with him a man who would knock at the door of the governor and ask for permission for himself, and the one who was with him to enter, without telling them that it was Sayyidina Umar bin Al-Khattab himself. When Umar entered the house, he would examine it and check on its furnishings. Umar heard that Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan ate a variety of food, so he waited until it was the dinner hour. Then he asked permission to enter and meet Yazid. When he saw his food, he told him not to be extravagant with regard to food. Umar did not stop at checking on them by means of these visits. Rather, he used another method, which was sending some wealth to these governors and sending people to watch them and see how they disposed of it. He sent 500 dinars to Abu Ubaidah, and Abu Ubaidah distributed the entire amount. His wife used to say, by Allah, the arrival of dinars did us more harm than good. Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu went to a worn out garment went out with a worn out garment on which he used to pray and cut it into pieces. Then he wrapped some of those dinars in each piece and sent it to the poor until it was all gone. Umar radiallahu anhu did the same with other governors during the visit to Syria. He did not only check on his governors during the journey, rather he would also bring them to Al-Madinah and appoint someone to watch what they ate and drank and what they wore, and he would also do that himself. 3.1.7, the archive or records of the Caliph. Umar was extremely keen to preserve the documents pertaining to the governors and the Khalifa in general. He was most concerned with the preserving the treaties that the governors had drawn up with the people of the conquered lands, lest anyone be wrong. It is narrated that Umar ibn al-Khattab had a box or chest in which he kept every treaty that had been drawn up between him and others. We may call this chest the archive or records of the Khalif. The governors also had chests in which they kept their papers and documents to refer to them when necessary, and so that there would not be any confusion about any matter. 3.2, complaint from the people about the governors. Umar would investigate complaints from the people about the governors himself. He was keen to check out the matter, and he would consult the wise and knowledgeable people around him, then issue his commands to reward or punish those who deserved it, whether they were agents or common folks. There follow some examples of the complaints against governors and how Umar dealt with them. The complaint of the people of Kufa against Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu. Some of the people of Kufa, led by Jarrah ibn Sinan al-Asadi got together and complained to Umar about their governor Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. That happened at a time when the Magians were gathering in Nahawan to attack the Muslims, but his group was not deterred, or this group was not deterred by what was facing the Muslims. Sa'd was just and compassionate toward the people. He was strong and determined against the people of falsehood and the troublemakers, and kind towards the people of truth and obedience. But despite that, these people who could not bear the rule of truth started to stir up trouble, and they wanted to achieve some of their whims and desires. They chose a time to make their complaint when they thought that Omar would have no choice but to listen to them, because the Muslims were preparing for a decisive battle which required that there be unity among the Muslims. They knew how deeply concerned Umar was for the Muslims to be united at all times, especially in such circumstances. So they hoped that they would achieve what they wanted. Khalif responded to their request and investigated their complaint. Even though he knew that they were evil people who followed their whims and desires, he did not hide what he thought of them. Rather, he told them bluntly and explained to them that the fact that he thought that they were wronging their governor and making false accusations against him would not stop him from investigating the matter. He proved to them why he thought that their intentions were bad when he said, "The fact that your intentions are bad is proven by your choice of time. When your enemy is mobilizing his forces, by Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, that will not stop me from investigating your case, even if the enemy attacks you." Umar sent Muhammad ibn Maslama at the time when the people were preparing to do battle with the Persians, and the Persians were preparing to attack Muslims. Muhammad ibn Maslama was one of the ones who was appointed to investigate complaints made against agents and governors at the time of Umar. Muhammad bin Maslama radiallahu anhu came to Sa'd and went around Kufa with him whilst the Muslims were mobilizing to head for Nahawan. Sa'd took him around to the mosque of Kufa, and he did not ask anyone about him secretly, for it was not their habit to conduct investigations in secret at that time. This shows us the method used by the Sahaba in investigating disputes that arose between people in charge and those who were under them. The investigation was conducted openly in the presence of the person in charge and those for whom he was responsible. He did not stop at any mosque and ask the people about Sa'd, but they said, "We know nothing but good things about him, and we do not want anyone else as governor. We will not say anything against him, and we will not help anyone against him except those who were on the side of Jarrah ibn Sinan and his companions." They kept quiet and did not say anything bad because they had no justification for doing so, but they deliberately did not praise him. Then they came to Banu Abs. Muhammad said, "I adjure by Allah, any man who knows the truth to speak it." Usama ibn Qatada said, "By Allah, if you adjure us, I would say that he does not divide equally, and he is not just towards the people, and he does not lead us in war." Sa'd said, "By Allah, if he says that he is lying and showing off, may his sight be taken away, may the number of his dependents increase, and may he be exposed to temptation. He went blind, he was given 10 daughters, and whenever he heard of any woman, he would go to her and pursue her. When he was caught, he said, 'The prayer of Sa'd, the blessed man, has caught up to me.' Then Sa'd began to pray him against them, saying, 'O Allah, if they are rebelling out of arrogance and falsehood, then strike them with your calamities.' Then they were struck with calamities. Al-Jarrah was killed with the sword on the day when they rebelled against Al-Hasan ibn Al-Ali and tried to assassinate him in Sabat. Qabisa was struck with rocks and died. Arbad was killed by a blow with a sword handle. This report gives us example of how Allah Jalla Jalaluhu supports his pious friends, and he answered the prayers of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas against those who had wronged him, and they were all stricken as the result of his dua against them. It also shows us how Allah Jalla Jalaluhu responds To the dua of Sa'd and others like him is a kind of divine care for the pious close friends of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. The fact that these people against whom Sa'd prayed met with a bad end indicates that evil was firmly established in their souls, which led them to the bad end. Sa'd defended himself and said, I was the first man to shed blood among the mushrikeen, and the Messenger of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu mentioned both of his parents when he spoke of him, and he had not done so for anyone before me. That was when he said to him on the day of Uhud, may my father and mother be sacrificed for you, O Sa'd. I remember when I was one of only 5 in Al-Islam, and Banu Asad are claiming that I do not pray properly or that the hunt has distracted me. Muhammad ibn Maslama went with him and with them to Umar ibn Al-Khattab, and when they came to him, he told them the story. Umar ibn Al-Khattab turned to Sa'd and asked, O Sa'd, woe to you, how do you pray? Sa'd said, I make the first 2 rakahs long and the last 2 rakahs short. Umar said, this is what I thought. Then Umar said, were it not for the need for caution, the way to deal with them would be clearer. Then he asked, whom do you appoint as your successor in Kufa, O Sa'd? He said, Abdullah ibn Utban. Umar approved and appointed him as governor. Inshallah, we will stop here on page number 89 and get back to it from practically the middle of the page. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. وتبارك اسم ربك وتعالى جدك ولا إله غيرك ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.